Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tweakers, streakers, and top-level leakers, welcome along to the Joe Spivey YouTube channel, where we discuss books and little else. The rhyme in the opening of this video changed 4 times in the last 8 seconds. I was going to talk about flabby streakers in the streets. I was going to talk about Labour Party leakers, which with the alliteration sounded quite nice too, and yet I forgot the term Labour Party leakers the moment I switched the camera on. So sorry if that was somewhat lacklustre. I shall promise to press on in a more gainly fashion and begin right away. Some of you proper loyalists, some of you have been here from the beginning and therefore exempt yourselves from my fascistic incursions when indeed I do take the Prime Ministership here in the United Kingdom. Those of you who were the first 200 subscribers will not have family members disappear in the dead of night, so congratulations. Those of you channel elites, those of you founding fathers, founding flusterers, will remember that I used to do a series called Slashing at Hacks, where I would toddle off down to a local supermarket or other such vendor and find myself a magazine, whether it be that from the left or the right, whether that be rational or rancid, whether that be moderate or mad. And that was quite enjoyable, and I was good at it, and found that, you know, reading a short form magazine was a good way of lightening the load, if you see what I mean. A good way of diluting the heft. Can you dilute heft? A good way of thinning the heft of Henry James and George Eliot and Charles Dickens or whatever. Nice to get something thin and something modish, something that was very much focused on the now. And I stopped doing that because I was spending £45 a month on thin bits of paper. And I thought, well, that is completely ridiculous, okay? It doesn't matter how much is in your current account, Joe. You cannot empty it on such flimsy matter. And so I stopped doing it. And yet felt the calling on Tuesday to go down to W.H. Smith's, which has the darkest and most haunting of post offices at the back of it, but again, that's minor trivia for another place. And I picked up The New Statesman, which has the front cover title, Angry Young Women. So we will be slashing at hacks this morning, and the bin men have chosen to arrive at the worst time. So if I have a sort of petty bourgeois disgust at their dirty hands as they take our yoghurt pots and our bags of orange peel, then that is why. I'm afraid I am the smallest of snobs. But anyway, that was lifting the bonnet up rather too much, wasn't it? Anyway, yes, I have the New Statesman for you, and I must first of all say that I don't know whether disgusted is too strenuous a term, but I am appalled, shocked that it went to press, or didn't go to press, but was designed. Are they going to take the recycling bins? Right. This is just a little outtake, folks, because there has been much tribulation about them not taking our bins because the incorrect items have been added to them. But there he is, he's grabbing them both, so Mother will be pleased. Anyway, you're here for the magazine, aren't you? You're not here. See, a regular YouTuber would cut all this out because it's not refined and it's not smooth and it's not professional. But I come to you unadulterated. I come to you as myself. And if I want to talk about the bins, I bloody well will. Anyway, I am amazed in this release of the New Statesman magazine that the all-encompassing, all-pervasive scandal which stalks Britain at the moment is not involved in it at all, is not featured in it at all. And that, of course, need I mention, is the calls for Keir Starmer to resign after Peter Mandelson, who was appointed ambassador to the United States in the latter part of 2024, was obviously heavily implicated in the Epstein files and has been found to have failed the Foreign Office vetting, and that failure was apparently not conveyed to Keir Starmer and was waved through rather nonchalantly and rather aggressively, supposedly without the PM's knowledge. And at the moment, the Commons and the chattering classes, and indeed the electorate at large, are trying to decide whether Keir Starmer is mendacious or hopeless. Okay, and those are two pretty poor options, you'll agree, for a national leader. We're deciding whether he knew about it and he knew that he had failed it pushed Mandelson through anyway because of the the diplomatic advantages of having such a sleek and snaky bloke there, our man in Washington. Or whether he genuinely didn't know, and Ollie Robbins in the Foreign Office, a junior clerk, really, a junior employee, withheld information. We're deciding, and whether he was able to effectively pull the wool over Starmer's eyes. Well, that's what we're balancing at the moment, and absolutely none of that features in here, which is strange. You'd have thought at the last minute they could have asked somebody with a centre parting, maybe, and a YouTube channel with 3,700 subscribers who could churn out decent prose very quickly. You'd have thought they'd have thrown a bit of money at him and asked him for 500 words on the matter so that they could be a little more present and a little more relevant in their magazine, but they didn't. There was absolutely nothing on Peter Mandelson or Keir Starmer in here. It's all about angry young women. As you can see here, there are, 32 angry emojis. I don't use that emoji very much. I am one for emoticons, believe it or not. I wish I wasn't, but I am. But yeah, there's that we'll look into today, and there is one other article concerning one Franz Kafka and his many translators, his many interpreters, and a very, very, very good piece by the individual who wrote the Kafka piece. I will name them, and in doing so, probably shame them. But yeah, a very, very, very nice piece that I want to read out. Not quite sure why I like it. Probably because it was just simply artful. But we do first of all have the main spread, okay? Inside the femosphere, how a generation of disillusioned young women lost their faith in politics, Britain, and men. Yeah, obviously we've heard an awful lot about the manosphere recently with the rather pallid and soft and blunt Louis Theroux documentary. It was good in many ways, but fell short in many ways. Tempted to do a half-an-hour video on it at the time, but chose not to. We've heard about the manosphere and how increasingly entrenched and yet primordial and atavistic ideas about women. Atavistic, for those of you playing Joe Spivey Verbal Bingo, is worth 13 points this morning. Yeah, these atavistic attitudes about women, that they should be, shoeless makers of casseroles, and they should, lactate and nothing else really. Okay, they should just be flesh-bound hangers of milk for individuals. They should just be baby farms who keep themselves to themselves, who look nice and pretty, who have not a mind of their own to contradict their mightier husbands, and they should be happy for their place in the nuclear family. Okay, that was mainly put to bed in 1426. That idea, and yet some very, very devious manipulators on the internet have brought it back. And in reaction, apparently, there is now a femosphere, a group of women who are, yes, the phrase here is disillusioned with young men and their attitudes, with the world and the lack of social mobility and focuses of particular governments, Britain's in particular, and broadly similar feelings, and an increased dislike and an increased sort of silent aggression against the other gender, who feel left out and feel heavily victimised and whatnot. Basically, the same inverted talking points that you'll hear Andrew Tate and H.S. Tiki-Toki and perhaps even sometimes Joe Rogan wheel out. Apparently there are a load of women doing that at the moment. But yeah, there are some sections that I wanted to highlight. So there are some statistics that we'll get into, but it's mainly a reporter by the name of, what's her name? Scarlett Maguire, who works at the polling company, who oversaw the research, and she goes and visits a few university campuses, which, as I've said in the past, is not really a litmus test for national feeling, but never mind. And she talks to a few people, and just some paragraphs that I wanted to read out with you. So she meets up with a girl with the surname O'Brien, and there are a few talking points surrounding O'Brien, a few bits I want to share. O'Brien grew up in Leicester, in what she calls a working class family. She defined this in the Marxist Marxist sense, meaning anybody who works for a wage, unlike the asset class and what she calls the billionaire Epstein class. Well, isn't that convenient, darling? I think she says that because her daddy actually earned quite a lot of money and daddy actually sent her to a damn good school, and yet that has not been to her benefit whatsoever. Okay? If all wage earners are working class, by that rubric, the Director General of the BBC is working class. Cristiano Ronaldo of Portugal and Saudi Arabia is working class, all right? Not everybody who earns a wage is working class, okay? The old proper definition of working class is either somebody who earns significantly less than the national average, or somebody who uses their hands to work, who does practical stuff, who mends taps and bleeds radiators and fills barrows with leaves and salts the paths of sites and other schooling facilities. Good afternoon, Stephen, if you're watching. And so, yeah, I think we already have a little sense of who Ms. O'Brien is. She did not grow up in a working class household, folks. She had always been progressive, but while studying for her master's degree at Bristol University, she started going to Black Lives Matter. Well, if you couldn't spot the idiocies there, then I really do feel for you. Protests on College Green, and felt inspired by the collective energy she saw there. She already had a TikTok following from sharing random content, but her audience rapidly grew as her posts got more political, became more political. Not got. It should be only used when you are travelling, okay? You can't really get a coffee from the cafe, you order a coffee from the cafe. You can get to Boston, you can get to Chelmsford, you can get to Beijing, but you cannot get lasagna. You cannot get wine with the girls. Anyway, that's a minor point. Yada yada. Americanisms again, crawling into our sacred tongue. Hamas's 7th of October 2023 attack on Israel and Israel's response in Gaza was a catalytic moment for her. I had been talking about immigration issues before, like Marxism, like philosophy, she said. Then it all just became the war. That's another interesting point, because it is clear then that O'Brien was subject to audience capture, what I talk about all the time. When you are held hostage by the very many thousands or millions, heaven forfend, who migrate across to your channel, you become consumed by their desires and not by the desires of your own. There is a reason that she is preoccupied with Palestine, and that's not because she feels any special empathy or sympathy for those being killed in Benjamin Netanyahu's genocide, okay? She may do, and she may feel just as bad as she does, she may feel as bad for the Palestinians as she does for the Nigerians and for the Uyghurs in China and for people in El Salvadorian gulags. But the reason that she talks about Palestine the most is because that's what works, okay? That's what snags the algorithm, that's what placates the algorithm, and that's what brings her up. We have another paragraph here and a second one, all talking about sort of the strain, what I've called in the in the margins, the where was it I've written it? I can't remember where it is that I've written it, but I call to some extent I called it the painful squeal of the unharmed. So you have this strange phenomenon in the polling and in the opinions that the most affluent of respondents, the most affluent of those polled, felt that the system didn't work for them and that capitalism would never provide material well-being, and yet the working class respondents, the working class, those who learned less, actually felt that they could move up in the world and that the society was rather more built for them and that they felt lots of opportunities. And then also it was the white middle class women who felt that the society was tyrannically racist, and it was the ethnic minorities who felt that racism was sort of a shadowy figure that barely impacted their lives. A very, very strange thing. You have the BAME community, whatever the hell that means, those from minority ethnic backgrounds, those who are black and those who are the children of immigrants, those who would be in line for racism if it stalked every corner, who say that it isn't really much of a problem at all, and yet it is the white women, those who quite often, what might you say, those who appropriate the suffering of others so as to feel moral virtue who feel that, as I say, racism is around every corner. Very, 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 very strange that the people who would be harmed the most by it simply shrug their shoulders and say, not really a problem, and those who have never experienced it in their lives are obsessed with it. What a strange phenomenon that is, on an economic front and a racial front. So here we go. Online divides have also bled into real life. Exclusive polling by Merlin Strategy for the New Statesman reveals that young women aged between 18 and 30 are by far the most progressive demographic in the UK. This polling found that young women are 26 percentage points less likely to feel positively about capitalism than young men, and much less likely to feel the economy works in their favour, even though, perhaps not in objective terms, but by comparison to their male counterparts, their testicle-scratching, knuckle-dragging male counterparts, there has never been a more lucrative time to be a young woman. They have never done as well in comparison to me and to other men between the ages of 18 and 25 than now, okay? Never in human history have young women ever done as well by comparison to their partners. I know that just like us, they may not be able to put deposits down for a mortgage, and they may not feel pride in their work, and they may feel as if the government is not acting in their interests, and they may feel that fuel prices are through the roof, and your wages are stagnating, and yet costs are rising exponentially, and those feelings are all valid. But to feel that you are in a worse place than the men opposite you simply is not the case. The unemployment rates among women between the ages of 18 and 30 are many, many, many points lower than in the equivalent male stratum. So there you go. That's stuff about the economy. And then last but not least, we have talk of what is termed online misandry. And I've written in the margin, well, I'll give you the paragraph first, and about how young women feel about men. I always feel myself discussing chickens and eggs on this issue, or horses and carts. Is it that women have distasteful views about men regardless, and that's what's driven the manosphere, or have manospheric attitudes increasingly disillusioned and atomised women and disenfranchised women and put women off? Which came first and which is in response, or is it all just one cyclone of distaste? I don't know. As expected, we found that there are significant divides between young men and young women, but they are not just confined to political views. Gen Z women, or Gen Z women, depending on your pronunciation, are more left-wing than their male peers when it comes to politics and economics. This generation of women is also much more pessimistic about the country and their own lives than men, and substantially more negative towards men than the men are towards the women. So we've heard all this talk for so long about us spitting at the weaklings in the street, about us all wanting to sign up to rape academies, and all of us wanting to have them by chains, and all of us thinking that they've all got ditzy heads, and that we all just want to have them, locked and chained beside our beds, and yet it seems as if women are more disparaging towards men than the other way around. 72% of men under 30 say they have a positive view of the opposite gender, compared with just 50% of women of the same age. 38% of men say they feel very positively towards women, while only 18% of women say the same about men. This trend is particularly pronounced among women under 25, of whom just 35% feel positively towards men. And I've gone off in the margin here. I've said this isn't because men feel more favourably about the opposite gender. I don't actually feel that it is. It's because misandry is freakishly normalised, whereas misogyny rightly isn't. So the men exercise greater caution when discussing women. In other words, you can say as a woman to a pollster, I pretty much hate all men, and that is clapped, and you are kissed on the forehead, and everyone says, yeah, sister, go girl. Whereas if the equivalent man says that, he is said to be an apparatchik of Andrew Tate. And so we respond very, very differently, do we not, to the pollsters? We respond very differently than how we live our lives. Okay, it may not always be illustrative or representative. So that's the femosphere, and again, some weird contradictions, and some very, very odd ways of thinking, but a lot of it understandable as well. So there you go. Again, I wanted a little bit more. It was. I may not have conveyed this very well, but it was couched in statistics. Okay, it was numbers crazy and numbers mad, and while that is undoubtedly important, I would have liked a little bit more extrapolation and a little bit more flair. Heaven forbid. Where is the flair? Well, the flair is here, because I've also turned the page on page 42 in the book section. So there was stuff on the asset class. There was stuff on Albert Speer. There was stuff on a writer whose name I'd never heard of, but apparently someone who was part of New York high life recently. But there is one on there is a piece on Franz Kafka, or at least on how he's translated and why he speaks to so many, why he speaks to Czechs and to the English and to the French and to the Russian and to the Americans. So it says Franz Kafka's 10 Apostles. The Middle European writer owes much of his fame to the gifted translators who took his words out of German and to the world. And I don't know how much I'm going to get into here, but I'll just give you the first paragraph and show why I was instantly enamoured. Literary centenaries are supposed to close the ledger, to tidy up a writer's unruly afterlife. Franz Kafka's 2024 centenary did nothing of the kind. Once the exhibitions were dismantled and the anniversary essays filed away, his sentences went on circulating, like summonses slipped under the door. What a phrase. That persistence has less to do with memorial culture, memorial, not memorial culture, memorial culture, than with migration. Kafka survives not by commemoration, but by transmission, by passing from hand to hand, language to language, into histories he did not live to see. And yet, one of those pieces you read that that appeals to you on sort of unknown grounds. You don't sort of know why you like it, and yet you do, which may indeed be the inclination of about half of my viewers. You don't really know what's going on, but you like watching it. A really, really good piece that I'd recommend you read. It's by Benjamin Balint, and it's a book called, it's a review, again I use those words lightly, it's a review of Kafkaesque, 10 great writers translate the 20th century by Meja Hruska, which itself is translated by Sam Taylor. So we're looking through about 27 lenses at this, and that was published by William Collins, is 272 pages long, and is, of course, £17 sterling. You now have to take out a bank loan in order to purchase your monthly book. But yeah, very, very good. I'd recommend you reading the whole thing. That's Kafka's lover. What's her name again? Milena Yesenka. She's tread carefully, Joe. She's something to look at, isn't she? There we go. That was Angry Young Women. That was The New Statesman. Not a bad rag, as it happens. I say that dispassionately, and yet I would, of course, love them to pay me £100 to write them a book review, but I don't write book reviews the way they want. They want experts to extrapolate on the subject matter, not on the book itself. But I've gone on for far too long and I've done 25 minutes. Yikes. Please do let me know down below what you think of men and women, whether you're 18 to 25, whether you're 76. Let me know what you think of the manosphere and what you think of this newfound femosphere, and whether you think that people respond to polls differently to how they live their lives, and how warped and amorphous and or polymorphous the answers to polls can be, and how they aren't necessarily that feeling doesn't necessarily carry through to their lives. Because, if you polled me and said, would you like a woman who slept with loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of men? And I'd probably say, well, sort of not ideally. If they've thrown themselves at every man every weekend for the last 5 years, maybe not. And yet, if I obviously had, in a hypothetical world, if I'd met somebody and fallen in love after 6 months and they'd said they'd slept with 35 men, I don't think I'd be particularly bothered at all. Given my prolific past. So there we go. I'm interested in the curious ways in which answers to polls and life choices interact, intersect, and perhaps contradict one another. So there we go. That's more than enough. I'll need a drink if I keep on going. I will, of course, thank you ever so much for watching BookTube. Caught your comments down below, and promise to be back with responses to The Mill on the Floss at some point in the future. Double thumbs up from Joseph, and I will, of course, thank you ever so much for watching, and bid you the fondest of earthly farewells.